Good afternoon. In just the past few days, I've had a number of people approach me about down payment assistance. Down payment assistance is a fantastic tool that allows people or enables people to get into a home with little to no money down. And so we help people all the time that use down payment assistance. It's great. I'm making this video today for all of you agents who have clients who are in need of down payment assistance or who want to use down payment assistance. And just want to go over a couple of things. To start off, let me just explain or just remind you, of course, you already know this, that with a normal loan, or better said, a loan that doesn't use down payment assistance, you've got basically two costs that the borrower needs to concern herself or himself with, which are basically your down payment and your closing costs. And so, for instance, if you have an FHA loan, then of course the two costs are 3.5% or $7,000. Let's say if it's a $200,000 loan, and then it's 2.5% usually for closing costs. So that's about $5,000. A lot of times you have a client who has enough money for the down payment, but not quite enough for the closing costs. So they ask you to negotiate for some seller's concessions, and many of you in the last year have been very, very successful, even though we're in a seller's market, to get the people to give you the seller's concessions of 2.5%, 3% to take care of that, and that's fantastic. Now, when someone comes in and they need down payment assistance, generally that's because they don't have any money or they have very little money. Now, with down payment assistance, as I said, it's great because it takes care of the down payment itself. So in this case, of course, with the FHA loan, $200,000, that would be $7,000. That's a huge boon to them. But with down payment assistance, you now have three different costs that have to be considered. You've got, of course, the down payment, you have closing costs, and last but not least, you have cost of the loan. And that's basically because with the types of loans that are attached to down payment assistance, those loans have extra fees and they're not included in the loan itself. So for instance, a regular FHA loan, the costs of the loan are already included with the interest rate and everything else. With down payment assistance, they are not. So they're an additional cost that have to be paid. So, for instance, if you've got someone that needs down payment assistance and they're buying a $200,000 home, the down payment assistance gives them the $7,000. Fantastic. But now you've got basically 5% in concessions that you're going to need to try and get from the seller to help your client get into that home. So of course you've got 2.5% for the closing costs, and you've got 2.5% on the side of the loan costs. That's a rough hill to climb, or a tough road to hoe. And so if you're an agent who has this, I've got some negotiation strategies that you can use. But most importantly, I'm making this video simply to give you an idea of sort of what you're in for when someone comes to you and says, hey, I'd like to buy a home, and by the way, I need to use down payment assistance. That generally means that you're going to have to do some fancy dancing to get as much in concessions as you can. As I said, usually in this case about 5%. Now remember, a lot of times if people come to you and they need down payment assistance, they still have a little bit of money. Let's say, for instance, they have $2,000, which of course isn't the $7,000 that they need for the down payment, and it's really not the amount needed for either the concessions or the cost of the loan. But $2,000 is $2,000, so it's nothing to be scoffed at. So, for instance, one of the things that can be done is you can negotiate and see if you can get 4% in concessions. That other $2,000 would take care of the other 1% in concession that would be needed in concessions to take care of everything. So it's always good to know, and those of course are the questions that I'm going to ask them, is what money do you have to take care of those things. So as I said, I'm making this video for you to simply give you the information you need to know what you're up against, what's going to be expected of you when someone comes to you and says, hey, I'm going to use down payment assistance. By knowing this now, you know how to negotiate, or better said, you know what to prepare for. And most of all, I want you to give me a call so that I can help you with the negotiation and show you what we've done in the past to help people get through this. Look forward to hearing from you, and best of luck out there.